I think it's kind of remarkable that today we sit 10, 12 days away from a hockey World Cup, and just to think, for a lot of fans, for a lot of people who follow the sport, just to think that that this particular World Cup was created by none other Pakistan is probably may come as a surprise. It's not going to be shocking because there's nothing shocking about it, but it's definitely a surprise for a lot of fans that this whole tournament that we see and we look forward to. It's one of the best hockey tournaments in the world apart from what the Olympic Games is about, was created by none other than Air Marshal Noor Khan. But 71, we all believe 69 were the meetings that happened between Pakistan and at that time the hockey, the system which was FIH. But the talks were already happening. The talks were happening in 64 when India won the gold medal in Tokyo at the Olympic Games. That's the time when there were initial talks, but nothing came out of it because there was nothing much, because the hockey whole sport was so Olympic based that just to think about a World Cup was kind of, oh no, why should we have a World Cup? 66, again, there were a little bit of talks happening in and around that, we should have a World Cup. And I think the key was, okay, football has a World Cup which is so widely popular, so why not hockey? And I think that's the time when Pakistan hockey, which at that point of time was heavily promoted by the armed forces, and that's the reason you see Marshal Noor Khan putting up his hand and saying, okay, we designed the trophy and we will host the World Cup. And that probably just caught on, and Pakistan would have hosted it, except for the fact that political tensions between India and Pakistan at that point, the Bangladesh liberation and all of that. And the world body had to shift it to Spain. They didn't want a World Cup happening and then suddenly something happens out there. So we ended up having the 1971 World Cup in Spain, which became the fountainhead rather of all the World Cups that we have seen. When you say that Kardar opposed that the Indian team shouldn't be coming there to play, there was nothing wrong in the opposition because the tensions were so high and nobody really wanted a flare-up. I think if India would have gone at that particular point of time, it would have created an issue. Those issues we have seen later on. 1990 World Cup in Lahore was very, very tense. I mean, I have covered that World Cup and I know how the team bus, the Indian team bus, never had India written on it because they didn't want any fans to understand and know that this bus that is going to the Gaddafi Stadium to play a match is the Indian team sitting out there. Those tensions were there in the 1990, just before the Lahore World Cup, we had an Asia Cup in Delhi. And at that time, you could see the entire Mahabharat team or Ramayan team, I don't know what was being shot at that time. They were all inside the stadium and they were all cheering India, and Pakistan won the Asia Cup in New Delhi to a huge amount of tension, and I think that carried over when it went to Lahore. Today you see the same situation in cricket, where people like Kardar on this side of the border are saying we should not be playing Pakistan. So it wasn't a surprise. I think it also brought to the fore not only the tension, but this high flare-ups that happened between India and Pakistan regarding sport. I think it's a good thing that the World Cup was never held in Pakistan because we don't know what would have happened if the Indian team would have reached there, if at all they would have gone. But holding it in Spain was good because at least the World Cup moved off extremely smoothly, and what we see today is a series of World Cups which not only have been engrossing, but they have really enriched the sport. The shift of power, in a way, and honestly, 71 wasn't really the shift of power. The shift of power happened in Rome in 1960 when Pakistan beat us for the first time in the Olympic Games. And I remember Leslie Claudius was the captain of the team, and during one of my interactions with Leslie, in fact in his house in Calcutta, where I said, which has been your saddest moment? I mean, sportsmen have extremes. And he immediately said, I mean, there was nothing that he took even a second. He said 60 was extremely sad that I had to go to the podium, become the first Indian captain to pick up a silver Olympic, which at that point of time was disaster. But then we sprang back. We won the 64 Olympic Games in Tokyo, where Prithipal's, all the goal scoring prowess and exploits were all very well known. By the time we hit 68, we were sliding. Australia was coming up, but we were sliding. We picked up a bronze. By the time 71 came, I think Pakistan had already upped its game. They had realized what was, playing with Europe and all. And one point needs to be made. Pakistan started playing a lot of matches in Europe. They started being more friendly towards European powers in terms of Holland, whether it was Spain, even England, Germany. So all those matches helped Pakistan. And by the time 71 came, they had a very good team. I mean, they had a penalty corner. Tanveer Dar was exceptional, even though, remember, the Indian team had a very young Ashok Kumar. It had a very young Ajit Pal Singh. They played an exceptional game. India took the lead. But then by that time, and this is a semi-final without Tanveer Dar, so you can understand the depth in the Pakistan squad, that their highest scorer, 8 goals in the entire tournament, was not playing the semi-final, and yet they won. So that 2-1 scoreline was, yes, in a way, a shift of power, but also in a way that, we are here, and now we can only build up. India, for some reason, went stagnant, and that's why Pakistan hockey, you can see the rise was phenomenal after that. Absolutely. I go back to Leslie's example, He said that when they flew back to India after taking the silver medal, they were not showing it to anybody. It was, today you win an Olympic silver. Look at the reception we gave our team when they won the Olympic bronze medal. And look at Leslie's sentiments that when he says that I didn't want to show my medal because I was feeling that what am I going to show? I went to get a gold and I've got a silver. That was, and on top of that, you're going to lose to Pakistan in the final. I think that sentiment has carried on. Of course, today you are in a position where you are 4th, 5th in the FIH rankings. Pakistan has not qualified for the World Cup. I think when Noor Khan came up with this idea, he probably never in his wildest thoughts, dreams, ever probably put this forward or anything came into his mind that there will come a day when Pakistan not only once but twice will not qualify for a World Cup. I think just to go away from the topic, I think this is something that world hockey really needs to take note of, because without Pakistan in the world order, hockey is not the same. And this is coming from us, it's like a big statement, but Pakistan needs to be there. And I think that's where not only the tensions, but that, the excellence of the sport, the excellence of the game, and how players come up to a very different level when they play each other will be there. 71, I think, is not what today's hockey is. Today's hockey is of a very different level. It's not only modernistic, it has no longer, there are no flanks, there are no defense areas, there's no midfield in that sense. It's a total game. I think if Johan Cruyff was today, at the end of the day, if Johan Cruyff was watching hockey today, he would actually exceptionally believe that this is what he also envisaged, the 11 versus 11. And just to go back, 2014 World Cup at The Hague, who was the chief guest in the World Cup final? It was Johan Cruyff. So when you look at what happened in 71, it was the start of a revolution. It was the start of a hockey which was very different. The 5-3-2-1 systems prevailed. But 5-3-2-1 systems then gave way to what we see today is completely modern, completely coach-driven. This is what probably in this World Cup and even the past is what we're going to see. I think one needs to recall a conversation with Akhtar Rasool. So he always said that, Pakistan and India are virtually on a level playing field. He says, but the big issue or the big advantage that we have is that we have got into our mind. In 1960, they got into our mind somehow, and that's what came through with Leslie's conversations. Later on, we did win 64. We beat them in the Olympic final. But after that, if you see really the record, you saw a magnificent Pakistan team winning World Cups, winning the Champions Trophies, winning the Olympic Games, winning the Asian Games. I think it was basically a classic case of modern sport of getting into somebody's mind. It took us years and years to somehow get over that. Today, we stand in a position where, of course, today Pakistan is not qualifying. It's a weakened side. But even when they were not weak, regular wins, regular victories over them ensured that we got into their mind. I think at the end of the day, it's all about how strong your mind is when you play a World Cup and Olympic, or when you play these finals and these semi-finals. I think that's exactly what you're going to be seeing in the next World Cup coming up, where the team that has the most mental strength is going to be standing on the podium. 75 was again a classic. Again, a team that were virtually balanced, completely. But then there was one classic player in that both the teams. His name was Ajit Pal Singh. I can just go back to again a conversation with Rick Charlesworth, and I asked him that who do you think was the best player in that particular era when you were coming up? Emphatic reply, Ajit Pal Singh was as elegant as any player in the world can be. And I think that was the difference.